Please give him a round of applause. He volunteered his time today. He's going to be definitely driving us around a little bit. Before I begin, any questions or anything like that?
Well, just to remind you, I know nothing about it. I don't know.
Nothing about it.
Apparently Hunt was here. Morgan was here.
Yes, yes. You can say John Hunt Morgan as much as you want.
No, you can't, because it was never used during the war, ever,
Whatever
ever.
makes you warm and
Except one time.
So if you just tell us from the beginning, I know nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, act like we knew him, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
The
acting.
full picture.
Really,
I got you.
We want a full picture.
So first we're going to really talk about the Federals that camped here beforehand. Because once we get to the battle site, we're mainly just going to be looking at Confederate and Federal positions. So Federals throughout the entire civil war are going to be moving through Tebbs Bend because of the huge bridge that we have over here. They're going to be going from Lebanon to Columbia and so on and so forth. The first kind of regiments that have a connection to Tebbs Bend, as far as the fighting goes, that arrive here is going to be the 8th Michigan and 79th New York Highlanders. Those guys that you might know either at Bull Run, if you know a little bit about the Eastern Theater, they're going to be those guys, 9th Corps guys. They're going to be moving into the Tebbs Bend area during the spring of 1863, mainly it's because of Burnside moving through with the 9th Corps. He's going to spread out those guys all across the state, and he's going to station these guys over here. During that time, they are going to start constructing the bridge that was burnt during Morgan's Christmas raid, and that's going to play in a little bit for the detachment that fought out here. The next Federal regiment to kind of move through Tebbs Bend is going to be the 25th Michigan. They're going to be arriving more towards May of 1863, and their actual campsite is just right behind you all. That's where they would camp for several weeks here at Tebbs Bend. They're going to be commanded by Orlando H. Moore, who is a Michigan man. He is a regular Army man. He has been in service for a while. He saw service out in the West fighting the Indians, and we're going to look at a little bit of the tactics that he used out there over here. It's really interesting to see how these veterans will sometimes use what they know in very tight situations. So before we head on, any other questions before we get on the tractor and start moving?
Let me take a picture.
Okay.
We'll be inquisitive, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be focusing mainly on the Confederates for the meantime, and then we're going to work our way to the Federals. And I'll definitely distinguish when we're talking about them. So, John Hunt Morgan, command, starting up into this raid is going to be starting up during the early summer of 1863. Now, since we all Western Theater buffs, I know that we all know about the Tullahoma campaign, the starting up of Braxton Bragg retreating from Tullahoma going towards Chattanooga, okay? So, John Hunt Morgan's, this entire raid's kind of not really part of that campaign, but it's helping out that campaign. Mainly it's to try to stop General Burnside's Army of the Ohio from starting up the Eastern Tennessee campaign that he eventually would do during the late fall of 1863. John Hunt Morgan's command starting up into this raid is about 2,400 men of his best cavaliers. They are spread up into 2 brigades, which I think if you all have the paper, you should be able to see the regiments in those brigades. The 1st and the 2nd Brigade is going to be in his division, small division if you will. 1st Brigade is going to be commanded by Basil S. Duke, one of his best commanders, in my opinion, in his entire cavalry division. Then you have the 2nd Brigade commanded by Adam R. Johnson, Mr. Lindo's favorite man out here. That is Stovepipe Johnson. And I think you all do have a few articles on him. I believe on the
Some
Western
book come out or
blog.
something.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
some book.
Minor thing. Definitely look into him. He is a character of a guy. He is an awesome man to read. Overall, Morgan's division is just really great. They have been seasoned, starting up all the way in 1861 with the 2nd Kentucky forming up. They have seen service through Shiloh, some at Perryville, the Christmas raid, Hartsville, everything. Most of everybody in Morgan's division is seasoned. They know what they're about to be doing. This raid is supposed to be the big one. This is the one that they're supposed to go deep into Kentucky and wreak havoc, if you will. So his command will leave Alexandria, Tennessee, give or take, around in late May of 1863, after he has been given permission by his superior Joe Wheeler in the Army of the Tennessee to go ahead into this raid. Now, John Hunt Morgan was supposed to stay in Kentucky. He was not even supposed to cross the Ohio River into Indiana and Ohio, but this is John Hunt Morgan, and he's going to do what he's wanting to do. And it was all supposed to basically stop, and it did halt Burnside's army, like I previously mentioned, but it was mainly just to stay in Kentucky, not go into those 2 other states. But we already know what he did. So he's going to leave Alexandria, Tennessee, and start heading up into Kentucky. He's going to start crossing the Cumberland River during the late parts of May, earlier parts of July. You're looking around July 1st through the 2nd. He's going to be crossing the Cumberland River. And initially, during the opening stages of this raid, his top scout, Quirk, who commands Quirk Scouts in the 14th Kentucky, is going to be wounded in the skirmish at Norris's Branch. Now, the reason why I mentioned this was because Quirk leads one of the best scouting companies in Morgan's command. He knows how to handle his men. He knows how to get the correct information for Morgan. And he's going to be wounded very early on into this campaign. It's going to have to sent back to Tennessee because it's so bad. And so a Lieutenant Castle is going to have to take over the command of the company from then on. Now, on July 3rd, Morgan's command is going to run into a small, about 150 or so man detachment in Columbia, which is going to result in the fighting in there. During that little small battle, Castle, who replaced Quirk, is going to be wounded. And so then a fellow by the name of Tom Franks is going to have to take over the command of Quirk's scouts. Now, going into a raid, if you have one of your best commanders of a scouting company go down, and then the replacement comes up, and then he gets wounded, then he goes down, and then another replacement comes up. Is that a good thing or a very bad thing? It's a very bad thing, especially starting up into a raid. Now, after the fighting at Columbia, Morgan's division is going to head on over into the Cane Valley region in Adair County, not too far from here. And he's going to be staying around there. He's going to send out Quirk scouts during the night to try to recounter, figure out what is the federal positions in Tebbs Bend. Quirk scouts is going to eventually report back to Morgan that they are busy as beavers, as one of them later put it. He has found the federal forces over here. They are digging in, they're working, they're throwing up breastworks, stuff like that throughout the night. And we're going to talk about the Federals in just a little bit. It was also during the night, John Hunt Morgan will task Roy S. Cluke's 8th Kentucky and elements of the 10th Kentucky, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Owen, to do a wide flanking maneuver. His main objective is to get to the bottomlands, if you will, of Tebbs Bend. Mainly to just kind of watch the road leading into Tebbs Bend, what we took on the tractor today, crossing over the bridge. He's mainly trying to watch that and stop any kind of federal reinforcements from coming in. And now, Cluke's men is going to be moving through this valley over here. I think, Betty Jane, where did you say the ford was?
Johnson's.
Johnson's Ford. He's going to be moving over in here. Can you kind of point out where it was? I think you said the
Okay.
silo.
Okay, see the big tall silo,
Mm-hmm.
then a barn, then something else, then four smaller silos.
Mhm.
That's the route up from Johnson's Ford. What you have to go down Ebenezer Road, turn down into another gravel road, and then get down to the river and cross the river and come up out into Lemon's Bend.
So that's going to be happening during the night. They're going to be moving out at around 12 o'clock during the middle of the night of the 3rd and the 4th. That force is probably going to be, I'd probably get that number around maybe 300, maybe less than that. It's not a very large force, but it's not a very small force. These guys are mainly just trying to stop any kind of advance long enough to let Morgan know, hey, something's coming up. So they're going to be moving through the night. Now, the rest of Morgan's command will eventually move up. We're going to basically stop with Morgan. Now we're going to move over to the Federals over here. So as I mentioned, Orlando H. Moore's regiment, the 25th Michigan, will get to Tebbs Bend in May of 1863. Give or take around in that time frame. Now, it is not a full regiment, as you have maybe probably already figured out. It's about 5 companies of the 25th Michigan. It's about 210 men total. Now, not all of those men will actually participate in the battle. Lieutenant Travis, who wrote the book on the 25th Michigan, said that in the battle they had 170 men. And as you can come to find out, that is very small compared to the force that Morgan's men had. Now, during the preceding days, whenever they get to Tebbs Bend, they're mainly going to be staying there. They're going to basically be a garrison force, just sitting around, camping, doing pickets and stuff like that. Now, the main reason why Orlando H. Moore was sent to Tebbs Bend because he got into trouble with his superiors. Jeremiah Boyle was the commander of Kentucky at that time. Boyle, yeah, it's that Kentucky accent coming out.
Oh no, we're making fun of Jeremiah. That's
Oh,
why.
Jeremiah.
Not his name. The man.
Oh, okay. He's going to get in trouble with his superior because Orlando H. Moore is a staunch abolitionist. And Kentucky at that time is going through a very, very intense political time because of the Emancipation Proclamation. Orlando H. Moore would get into trouble because of that, because of some slave auctions that were going on, and Jeremiah Boyle did not like that and would send him out to Tebbs Bend, basically to try to get him out of Louisville because he caused a very bad ruckus. And so Orlando H. Moore will get here during May of 1863, and he will also find that there are about 40 men from the 8th Michigan and 79th New York under the command of what we will come to know today as a very I don't know how to put it, but a very interesting man. I'll put it that way. We will come to figure out who this man is. Lieutenant Michael A. Hogan. He is a very interesting character, and we will come to figure that out later. They're going to get into trouble with each other because they both hate each other. Hogan is a part of a different department. He's a part of the Department of Kentucky. Orlando H. Moore, now his regiment, is the part of the Army of the Ohio. Those two will start to get into each other, and we're going to talk about that later on. But they really and truly just hate each other's guts because Hogan is one of those interesting men. Again, I won't get into it just yet.
He's a teller of tall tales. Is that a good way of saying it?
You can put it that way. Yeah, you can put it that way. So, during the early parts of July, Orlando H. Moore knows that John Hunt Morgan's command is starting to move up into this direction. He knows that he's coming, and he thinks he's probably going to come through Tebbs Bend because he did during the Christmas break. So, during that time, he's going to start using his men to throw up breastworks along what was known as the Narrows at that time. Did you all by chance possibly see the main defensive works for the Federals while driving through? If you didn't, we're definitely going to be hitting that up. And he's going to start telling his men to throw up breastworks. He's going to dig a rifle pit. He's going to dig, we're not 100% sure if it was a stockade style or if it was just breastworks, but he's going to dig a first line and then a second line. That's going to be the main line, and we're all going to get into that once we get over to there. It's going to happen from, again, late May, early July. That's the 1st through the 3rd, if you will. And from then on, basically, Moore is just trying to wait for Morgan. Now, a little bit on Moore. Moore, as I had previously mentioned, was a veteran of the regular army. He was part of the 6th U.S. Infantry, and he saw service out west against the Cheyenne Indians. Now, he has already been exposed to incidences where he has been outnumbered by a whole lot, being sent into traps, if you will, where there are tons of Indians trying to create basically death zones. And that's what we're going to figure out today. He's going to use that same kind of method out here at Tebbs Bend, trying to draw Morgan in, kill as many men as he possibly can, and inflict as many casualties as he possibly can. So any questions or comments or concerns while we're over here?
I got several. A.
Yes.
Tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm Taylor Bishop.
There you go.
Used to be a part of the American Battlefield Trust Youth Leadership Team from the 2019 to 2020 season. I've done a couple of projects with them. You might have seen the YouTube video with me on there. I forgot that. Yeah,
that's okay. And two, for those of you who don't know, Basil Duke is John H. Morgan's brother-in-law. Duke will marry his sister Henrietta. She's known as Tommy in late 1861 or in 1861. Morgan has another brother-in-law as well. You may know who he is. He used to wear a red shirt into battle, AP Hill. So that's his other brother-in-law. So there's just trying to give some connection into that aspect. And the Ninth Corps and the comment about, well, first of all, Morgan will defy two direct orders. Oh, yeah. Because there's the order not to go north of the Ohio River, and there's also the order if you see Rosecrans moving south, you need to come back. So he defies two orders here, not just one. Although I still have some question, and maybe we get into it later on, about the whole delaying of the Army of the Ohio, because Burnside was going nowhere to those other two divisions of the Ninth Corps were coming back from a place called Vicksburg. So I'm pretty sure Dave Maury uses that same argument about it disrupts the Army of Ohio, and I think it does a little bit, but I'm not sure how heavily it disrupts the Army of Ohio from forming.
Well, that was the planned intention. Did it do a whole lot?
Yeah, I don't think it's that effective.
Chris Kolakowski thinks it does. I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just saying.
No, I mean, no. Because again, Burnside, those two divisions of the Ninth Corps, they're down at Vicksburg well past July 4th. Right, and Burnside's made it clear he's not going anywhere until he gets those other two divisions back. Yeah. And so the timing works out pretty well, but I'm not sure how much that really slows down Burnside from taking Knoxville. It certainly has no impact really on the Tullahoma campaign, which is, Rosecrans is extremely successful, winds up taking, of course, Chattanooga, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not sure that whole, how disruptive is it truly? That I'm not sure. And maybe that's something we'll talk about over dinner or something like that. So, okay.
Right, so
do we want to talk about the cemetery before we go?
I'll let you do that one. I'm not much knowledgeable on cemeteries.
Okay. Okay. The men are really buried in the stone wall that you see there. Within the stone wall, we passed where they were first buried, the Confederates, where they were first laid out along the road, and then in 1872 they're taken up. And they're put in this mass grave, and the top of the monument is erected. It's one of the oldest Confederate monuments in the state. It's not recorded anywhere much. Only one little newspaper article about it. And then by 1940, it's knocked over. So the town's McKinley Monument made this unusual concrete base to put it on so that nobody can get up there. It's very difficult to even get up there to even take care of the monument. It had an urn at the very top, which is missing, but other than that, it is intact now. And these stones were put here by the people that adopted the soldiers. I used to bring students out here, and nobody knew who'd been killed. Who these people are. So I researched them, and then the VA would not pay for their tombstones. They said it was a mass grave, and I couldn't prove who they were. Of course, Mr. Rogers, Hal Rogers, had gotten 129 down in Mill Springs. He didn't know where but I was not very powerful. So therefore, they could just have me, I just had to raise my own money. So we had civic clubs and families adopt these soldiers. I ordered the tombstones and we got them delivered, and the Ben Hardin Helm chapter over in E-Town helped us put them up. So anyway, that's the reason for the tombstones. Not all the men are here. Colonel Chenault and Major Brent were taken back to Lexington. There's a diary, Burke's diary says that the men stood apart and watched their bodies go by on a little wagon somewhere on Ebenezer Road. And then another man was taken to the Lancaster Cemetery, no, Winchester Cemetery is buried there. That's Mr. Current. And the rest of them are buried here in the mass grave. So I wanted to tell you that. Okay. Oh yeah, the government said, I finally got a hold of let's see, how did I do it? So, a lady in Columbia was a secretary for Ms. Gore. So I did get those little stones down there. They were going to make them just little bitty. I said, no, I want them big. So we've got them. We've got, that's from the government. That's all I could get from them.
Oh, girl.
The Michigan Monument was put
About $1.25.
and I called Michigan and I said, you don't have an offer for me one back. So he said, we'll get one. So they ordered it. And in 2 weeks' time, they had it. And it was ready for us.
Betty, how much were each one of these individual stones?
Well, then they were like 140 or something like that. Now I think they're more expensive. I looked the other. We had to buy one for Frank Boss. We found him later, and they bought his stone, and I think it was $200. But when I first ordered these, they were like 140.
So you still ordered them from the VA, but had to pay for them
No,
from the VA? Because
I got the name of the factory in Mississippi.
and went direct to the factory.
Oh,
Factory direct.
That's right.
For all your gravestone, CSA gravestone needs.
I love that. That's because it's the same style, obviously. So that's why I was asking.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just so aggravated because when I bring my students out here, cars will be up in here. They drive up from here, and they had these needles. They were using this to do drugs. So I said, no, we're not going to have that. So we had these trees planted, those great big trees now. We had them planted right there so you couldn't bring a car up here. And now you can get a car up here. But see, now they realize it's a cemetery. So they haven't picked up needles here in a long, long time.
Wow.
So anyway, it's been a long journey.
Recap from our last tour stop. So Morgan has sent a flanking column under Roy S. Cluke of the 8th Kentucky and elements of the 10th Kentucky under Lieutenant Owen, and they're going to be going over to the bottomland. So we'll get towards that towards the end of the tour. Now Morgan's main force is going to start moving up in this direction towards the Federals. And we're going to first talk about the Federal positions, and then we're going to go over to the Confederates. So the Federal positions, like I had already mentioned, they had already had two lines. You have the main line, you have the first line, that is the rifle pit, and then the main line. That's where the stockade / breastworks. We're not really 100% sure because some guys say it's a stockade, some guys say it's a breastwork, so go figure. Now, Orlando H. Moore, by this point again, only has about 170 men. That's it, 170 men. That's not a whole lot. Morgan's men in the main fight, as we will come to know, they'll have somewhere in the range of about maybe 900 to 1,000 men. That's some pretty big odds going up against Confederates. Now the 25th Michigan, they are all green. They have not seen combat before. This is their first ever battle. Now he's going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 70 men. Colonel Orlando H. Moore is going to have about 70 men in the first line. That's the rifle pits. Then he's going to have the rest of his men up into the main line. Now, as we will come to figure out, the topography of the main line and the first line is really interesting. The main line just sits a little bit above the first line, so that way if the Confederates come to attack, Moore can easily fire all of his men in one direction, not hit any of his men in the backs, and fire at the Confederates. He's trying to bleed Morgan, if you will, for every single step that he takes once he's attacking. Now, moving on over to the Confederate side. John Hunt Morgan is going to send 3 regiments into this fight. That is the 7th Kentucky under the Texan, Huffman, under the Texan, under the Huffman. That I say Texan because the 7th Kentucky is an interesting regiment because they include Kentuckians, Tennesseans, and Texans all in one regiment, and there are some fierce fighters out here. The 7th Kentucky is going to be positioned on the Confederates' right. Then you're going to have the 5th Kentucky under Howard D. Smith, who are going to be holding into the center. And you're going to have Chenault, David W. Chenault's regiment, the 11th Kentucky, off to the left of the Confederates over in here. And they're going to start moving in this direction. The first rifle shots are going to start up in and around the 4 o'clock in the morning range on July the 4th. That's between the pickets way out in advance. Some of them are Company I of the 25th Michigan. And they're going to slowly but surely start falling back towards this direction. During that time, during that little period of falling back slowly but surely, Moore is going to be sending out the cavalry that he has on hand to figure out what the situation is up and to the front. And so he's continually getting the information that he wants. He knows that Morgan's probably going to be attacking him. And if he does, as we're going to figure out, but as he does, he wants to make sure that it is the entirety of Morgan's command. He knows that there's a flanking calling that moved around, but he doesn't know if that's just a diversion or if that's the main call. So at any which rate, Federals fall back. At around, what would you wait? Probably about 6:30 or so?
Yeah.
The artillery gets up here?
Yeah, 6:30.
So about 6:30, Major Byron's, is it Byron? Burns?
It burns.
I just hate how they always pronunciation. Tomato. So his artillery gets up over here. That's about 4 guns. That's find right here. Two guns are a Parrott rifles, 3-inch guns, and 2 12-pound howitzers. They're going to be positioned right up over here. Now, his artillerymen are actually infantrymen within, cavalrymen within Morgan's command. They're going to open up at about what? You said about 600 yards, give or take? Yes. Onto the first main line. That is what the Confederates can see. They can see the rifle pit. Other than that, they can't really figure out what else is over there. And so they start firing shells into that rifle pit. Now, they only fire about 2 shells, give or take. And they hit one private in particular, George Hicks of Company E of the 25th Michigan. Now, the reason why I'm going to mention him is because he embodies what the Civil War soldier is in my mind. He's a very young man. He's about in his 20s. Whenever he signed up for the Civil War in August of 1863, he left a wife and a baby back at home. And now he's out here. He's going to be hit by one of those artillery shells. It's going to rip off his right, really and truly just rip off his right arm, shatter his leg. He's going to be taken off, and he'll eventually die a couple days later after this battle. But he is, in my mind, what the American Civil War soldier is. Somebody back at home, somebody important to him, left his child and his wife. And so, by that point, Morgan, in true Morgan fashion, will demand immediately for surrender for the entire garrison, for whatever it is.
So as soon as he's fired some artillery,
yeah,
tell him I got guns here, now he thinks he can get him to surrender.
Yeah, because from the information that he's received, these guys, he thinks that, oh yeah, this is going to be really quick, going to be easy, we can get them out of the way. But Orlando H. Moore is not in the mood for that, because today is July 4th of 1863. It is Independence Day. And no, they're not fighting aliens or anything like that. So. And Morgan's going to send over a flag of truce. We're going to see the field in which they asked for the flag of truce. We're not going to get into that field. But he's going to ask for the immediate and unconditional surrender of the entire garrison of the stockade. And this is Moore's reply. Present my compliments to General Morgan and say to him that this day being the 4th of July, I cannot entertain his proposition. Then on, staff officers will basically look at each other. It's kind of getting awkward by that point. They start falling back, and then that's when the battle starts really starting to heat up. And that's where we're going to start walking down there, and we're going to talk a little bit about the battle. Yeah.
Why didn't the batteries open up again? It's an ideal place.
Oh yes, they do. Sorry.
Okay.
They after that point they do open up again. Moore kind of getting really mad about that because then all 4 guns open up and start getting into his position. He orders his men to pick off the artillerymen. They start falling down. The artillery battery alone will lose anywhere between about 11 to 18 men. And usually for an artillery battery, you're looking at about 60 men, but for this artillery battery, you're looking in the range about 45, give or take. And taking anywhere from 11 to 18 casualties, that's pretty bad for an artillery battery. And from then on, he's going to pull his artillery off of this little ridge and start falling back into that direction. And there's some interesting things that happen after that, because then that's where you're going to start getting the pullback from some of his Confederate officers. And we'll discuss that once we get down there. So any questions, comments while we're over here?
Nobody said anything about the 2nd Kentucky. Where are they?
Anybody?
I've always, and there's a couple of other regiments that are in reserve, but the 2nd Kentucky is way on, they're out of head. They've bypassed, they've probably already in Campbellsville. So they have just bypassed this position, and it's the detractors of Morgan say that's exactly what he should have done. Just left this group here and gone, like a patent thing, Remember when they asked him to give back, don't take Trier, and he said, I've already taken it, do you want me to give it back? Okay, so it's, he should have probably just left this group here. But anyway, so they're there, and then the 9th Tennessee's in reserve, and Grigsby's regiment is in reserve here. So anyway, just let you know where everybody is.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. If you're all ready, I guess we're going to go ahead and start walking. Alan, if you can.
Now, these people are used to this one. Right in front of the rifle. So this corner, and then right in front of that white building.
Tebbs Bend. And I mentioned there was a little bit of a resentment by the Confederate officers, some of the high command, whenever they lost the artillery. There are 2 officers more notably. That is going to be Howard D. Smith of the 5th Kentucky. That is going to be, and the other one is going to be Adam R. Johnson, also known as Stovepipe Johnson of the 10th Kentucky Partisan Rangers. They're going to really truly tell Morgan, hey, we should not attack this. This is basically it's stupid. Because the flanking column has already made it around Tebbs Bend. They've already made it around. They've gotten around, so can we. But Morgan is wanting to go ahead and try to take this because, why not? Because being able to take a 170-man garrison is definitely going to add to your reputation. Now, Adam R. Johnson would also later write, going into this, in the later years, that going into this attack, that the majority of the Confederates only have about 7 to 8 rounds per man. And so going into a fight, now to give you an idea of how long this fight lasts, it's about 3 hours. So do you think 7 to 8 rounds can last you for 3 hours? No. And so the Confederates will then have to start preparing, and nevertheless, Morgan tells himself, tells his colonels, go ahead and attack. And so he's going to give Adam R. Johnson the leeway to go ahead and attack. Again, Adam R. Johnson doesn't really want to do this. He sees the stupidity of going up against these rifle pits. So the Confederates are going to start to attack. To kind of reiterate the Confederate positions, you have the 11th Kentucky right over in here on the left of the Confederate positions, 5th Kentucky in the center, the 7th Kentucky off to the right. To give you an idea of the numbers that we're looking at, 11th Kentucky is going to have about 500 men. They are by far the largest Confederate regiment at Tebbs Bend during the battle. The 5th Kentucky, you're looking in anywhere about, probably about 200, give or take, men. And the 7th Kentucky is probably the same number and around there. So you're given, there might be a little bit more, there might be a little bit less. We aren't 100% sure because you have to imagine there's some guys that are going to be falling out, they're going to be dropping out before the battle. The 11th Kentucky, to give you an idea of how tired they are, they did not pass through Columbia until 3 a.m. in the morning on July 4th.
Mm.
And they're still trucking it up
Yeah.
here to try to get up here. So those guys are tired.
Mm.
But nevertheless, they're going to have to open up this attack. And so the Confederates are going to start moving forward. Remember, there's only about 70 men in that rifle pit at that point in time, give or take. And so then the Confederates will very quickly take that rifle pit, which, if you were a Confederate, that kind of seems odd, because wouldn't that be one of the hardest things that the Federals are going to try to fight for, from what they can see, is a rifle pit? And so to kind of hop over to the Federal side, this is what Orlando H. Moore wanted. He wanted Moore to attack, because if you notice the land terrain over here, this is where the Narrows is. It's going to start slowly but surely closing in. And as Morgan's men are starting to move in, they're going to have to start bunching up together. They're going to start losing unit formations. Companies are going to start overlapping each other. Men are going to start getting on top of each other, if you will. And so that unit cohesion that you need getting into an attack is going to quickly drain out. It's the closer that you get into the Federal lines. So the Confederates, again, take the rifle pits very quickly. And so the Federals, during the preceding days, if you're wondering how did they escape, they had built parallel trenches in front of the first line of defense. They built parallel trenches that they easily walked out of and just ran, while the main line, about 100 men give or take, are going to be firing at the Confederates, giving covering fire for them. Any questions or comments or concerns before we get into the heat of battle?
The 7 or 8 rounds, why? Because they hadn't fought anything major up to this point. I mean, there's some skirmishing along the way. Why are they so skimpy? When I reread Betty's book the other night, it was...
From what I've been able to figure out, most of the times on a cavalry raid, like one of these Confederate cavalry raids, they will only issue out very limited amounts of ammunition per man. Just either because they only have that much ammunition and they have to go raid in an area, they have to get ammunition. And it also didn't help that the ammunition wagons that they did have were not catching up to the brigade at that point in time. Because remember, this is a raid. They have to go. You can't really stop for too long. So that's some of the reasons why they only have about 7-8 rounds per man.
Yeah, the ammo wagons really make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, is Morgan stubborn here? Sorry, I'm going to start. Because he's gotten his nose punched so many times on the eastern flank of Bragg's line down south of Murfreesboro, because his command is getting hit 3, 4, 5, 6 times before they launch this raid. We're on the western flank, forces handling the Union forces easily. Opposite thing is going on the eastern flank.
I mean, so you just have to really and truly look at Morgan and himself. You know, the Hartsville raid, that was successful beyond compare. I mean, that you almost capture an entire.
He's walking around with inflated head. Right.
You could be, and I think in a lot of ways he thought himself of being a great tactician, which could have been, but in the heat of like an actual battle, going toe to toe with actual Federals and getting into those complicated maneuvers of flanking and stuff like that, I just don't think that he had that going for him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Now
He hadn't been married very long. He has to show off.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's that. There's that as well.
Yeah.
But and I think Dave Powell covers it in his book a little bit. But Dave and I have talked about this whole. He's got several actions before that raid even starts, where his troops are getting punched in the face. Because he's like 8, 10, 12 miles in the rear because he wants to be close to Maddie, right? So there's this whole. So I think there's part of that too. But I like the whole. Well, he's got to show off because he's already showed off to her before they got married. So yeah. And
you also have to look at the information that he was given. Again, remember, at the first part of the tour we had mentioned about how Tom Franks was the second replacement for Quirk Scouts.
Yeah.
And so that information that Morgan's getting is not the greatest quality that he is used to. And at that time he probably thought this was going to be easy because it's just only around 200, give or take, Federal soldiers, and they might be dug in, and we can easily whip them and take them because we've already gone through here again, and we've had great success through this area. And you also have to imagine as well that Morgan's command also has locals from this area. There, in fact, locals will lead Cluke's command through the fords, going through Lemons Bend and trying to get into the Bottoms area. So he has locals within
Which makes that even more ironic, because they should be telling him about how narrow this area is.
Well, he'd just been through here in the Christmas ride.
Yeah.
Right. So
But
there's
see, Moore has stopped the stagecoach. So he doesn't want anybody to see what he's doing down there.
right.
So he is, he's pretty cagey too.
Yeah.
You've got two cagey men,
Yeah.
And he wants Morgan to think he's got reinforcements. He's got those men
marching them.
marching over the bridge and making noise and all that. So he wants, Morgan to think he's got a larger force. Yeah.
Any questions or comments or concerns while we're here? Any others? Okay.
In fact, no reinforcements for 30 miles.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not worried about you. This thing will move sometimes. So.
Okay. See, it goes down and around those trees in front of the rifle pit.
Okay.
See, this isn't here.
Yeah. At the time this wasn't here. You can see how steep it is right now because of this road. At the time of the battle, it was not as steep as it looks.
But you see the narrowing. See the narrowing as it comes down through here. Okay. What happened? The wife of the county roadman, had a wreck. She had a wreck in the curve. So he put the fill in. This is Mr. Faulkner.
How big is it compared to the cemetery?
So, almost like this.
I mean, it's.
That 19 will start right in here.
There's nothing for the Union.
11.
You like writing emails while I'm listening to
This is in the general area of where the first line was, what I was talking about, that rifle pit, where about 70 federal soldiers were. Betty Jane, I know that you had, whenever they did the archaeological
Yes.
thing, you know more or less where it's at. Could you
Yes, it's
possibly
just
point out?
exactly where I had the sign. It just cuts across that road in a slant like this, slanted toward that tree there in the yard. And they zigzag across.
Yeah.
I was visualizing.
And again, I know if you look over here, it looks very somewhat steep, not this area, but the more we get over to the narrows, it starts to drop off over there. At the time of the battle, it would have not done that. It was very much of a slope, if you will. Not as steep, but more of a gravitational going up to the hill. So, again, you have the 11th Kentucky on the left, my right over here. You have the 5th Kentucky in the center, and 7th Kentucky off and to the right. And I had kind of mentioned locals. The locals in Morgan's cavalry are going to be in the 7th Kentucky. So they're going to be more towards the right. Now, as the Confederates they've already taken the rifle pit. Okay, they pushed back those 70 odd men. So now there's 170 men inside the main line. We're going to be walking over towards the main line in a little bit. At this moment in time, that's when the Confederates realize, this ain't good, because what about 100 yards, if you give or take,
Yes.
from the rifle pit to the main line?
Yeah.
It is just a field of abaste. Now, do you all know what abaste is? If you don't, it's basically, to give you a good picture, it's like this. Just fallen tree branches, sharpened up everywhere. That is what that looks like, that entire field. And so now they have to realize, like, they've already committed by this point. They've taken this rifle pit. If they pull back now, they're going to look like cowards. They're taking out right just as the fight is starting to go up. And so they have to just continue on. And so now this is when you're going to get those main Confederate charges. Now, those charges were intense. There was about 8 charges total in this entire battle. We're going to talk about a few of them. But the Confederates will start going towards the main line. The main line will fire at them. They'll start to fall back again, right back around into where the rifle pits are. They'll regroup, charge back up again. Now, as we'll come to find out, once we get over to the main line, how close those guys were getting towards each other. The Confederates on one hand, for the 7th Kentucky, for example, the river is just right over there. They have a bluff on their right flank. And so they legitimately have to start shoving men just right up against each other, trying to get up into those Federal lines. And they'll get so close that they said that men's heads are going to start just popping off. Like, not actual popping off, just their heads will start to explode because of how close they are to the melee, to the muskets. Because at 30 yards, with a 1853 Enfield, that's pretty bad. With a 58 caliber Enfield rifle, if you've seen how disastrous that can be alone. And so the Confederates are going to continue to attack over and over and over again. They're going to fall back. At one point, 7th Kentucky for a moment, we're going to talk about them. 7th Kentucky, they're going to start swinging around a little bit more around the Federal line. And Captain Bennett's company of the 10th Kentucky, this is your guys right over here, they're going to actually flank around the Michigan men and start firing into them. That's going to cause them to fall back for a little bit. They're going to reform and charge them off again. And we're going to talk about all the Federal positions once we get over to the main line. Not really going to talk about the company positions just yet because we're just right where the Confederates are starting to regroup, charging back and going back and forth. So any questions before we get really into it?
Now, what's caused this to be steeper than it was at the time of the battle? You said it was not this steep?
Not as steep because the road, where would the road go over in here?
The road is approximately where it was.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit more to the right, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
I know that John kind of had said that at the time of the battle it was not as steep as it seems today.
See, what was I going to add to that? Just a second. You're going to tell about the 7th Kentucky falling into the river.
Yeah, I'll talk about that once we get over there.
And the image shows the Confederates on foot, appears to.
Yes, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
they,
So
they're
it's
not
not
mounted
mounted?
at this
Okay.
battle. They dismounted over there. They're,
Horse holders are
Yeah.
behind a house way back up the road.
Yeah. they're protected behind a ridge in which they can hide their horses in. And these guys, yeah, they're on foot. They're not on horses.
Yeah, Morgan's cavalry is basically mounted infantry.
Yeah.
They can charge, they can fight on horseback if need be, but
Yeah.
most of the time they will dismount, fight as mounted infantry. Preferred weapon is typically the 2-band or short Enfield because it's got range, so they can fight infantry. And of course, earlier they have the bullpups, which we talked about a little bit over at Munfordville. But they bring artillery around as well because if they do hit an infantry force, they can
Yeah,
fight that
they
infantry
can go
force
to
for a
Tebbs
while as needed, and then get on the horses and what do you call it, the air cav over there, right? The horses are basically the helicopters.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thought process. As a matter of fact, if you were a private and you joined Morgan's command after Shiloh and you showed up with your grandpappy saber, you'd be chuckled at because they're like, we don't use those. Officers, of course, carried them. The enlisted men did not carry sabers or swords. They preferred pistol or two,
Yeah.
short band Enfield if they get their hands on it. By this point, probably most of them had short band Enfields, I would
At
think.
this point, the armory in Morgan's command is what you would expect in Confederate cavalry command. You have Springfields, Enfields.
So it's still a mix.
Yeah, it's all trying to base around the infantry. Say
Yeah.
that they at Columbia they find infantry over there.
Mhm.
Okay, the armaments that they have equals the same armaments that they have. So that's
Exactly,
why you can
yep.
get some ammunition from them.
Yep.
Because oftentimes Morgan's men are facing infantry rather than cavalry, and if they can easily re-equip ammunition from those dead infantrymen, if you
Sure,
will,
yep.
rather than a dead cavalryman.
Yeah.
And they really and truly didn't prefer some of the cavalry arms because they were just faulty or they just didn't really go toe-to-toe with, a standard 1853 Enfield.
Now, Duke will outline in the 1st Kentucky raid. He'll mention what each company of the 2nd Kentucky has, and it's a mix of stuff.
Oh,
but by this
great.
point, they're trying to standardize. They're trying to use it because he's got shotguns and tower muskets and all kinds of stuff. But they're really trying to standardize and use either Springfields or short band Enfields, those kinds of things. So yeah, that's a great point. You can pick up ammunition.
Yeah,
Whether it's
easily.
5.77 or 58, it's going to work.
Yeah.
I thought what I was going to tell you.
Great.
All right, as you look at this terrain, you don't understand that brick house it looks lower rather than higher, because when they built it, they bulldozed off about 5 feet, and that changes the whole terrain because that used to be higher. And you see, when this rifle pit was dug, it was easy to come out of, to run back. But see, when you get back to there, that's the second line of moors is going to be on a higher position than it looks today. And you must know that to really understand it, I think. Okay.
Any questions or comments while we're still down here? All right, sit on up. Valley down here. Let's see how steep it is and where those Confederates had to go up from. Just trying to look down from this ravine. This is where the 11th Kentucky's going towards, if you're trying to get an idea of where they're at and what they're having to come up towards.
So he said, Steve, I don't know.
They captured Uniontown.
In 1718 unit.
Line, and so I'm going to discuss a little bit of what the Federals are going through during this attack, and just really and truly from then on go into the attack. So again, there are only 5 companies of the 25th Michigan here, only about 170 men, as I've continually said throughout the entire time. And as again, Morgan's men have somewhere between the neighborhood of about 900 men to 1,000 men going into attack. That's 1 to 4 to 5 odds, give or take. And so the Federal positions as far as companies go, I know some of you may want to know what those are. So from left to right, you're going to have Company K, and in the middle, that's where it's going to kind of get really foggy because guys are going to start trying to run back, and it's going to get really intermingled. And this is not the set in stone company alignment. This is just from reading diary accounts and just trying to piece together. You have Company K, E, D, F, elements of Company E over in here, and then Company I somewhere. Company I, that's DeBoe's Dutchmen. They're going to be held in reserve right over in here along this little knoll right over in here. But you're also going to have elements of Company I just intermingling, just trying to get as much fire as we possibly can down into the line. So from then on, you're going to have almost 8 attacks overall in the entire battle. It is very intense for the Federals. Now the Federals, they have a lot more ammunition than the Confederates. They have more than 7 to 8 rounds than the Confederates did. They have 40 rounds, and they also have reserve ammunition waiting for them, ready to go. So during these attacks, you know, the Confederates are going to try desperately to try to break the Federal line. At one point, they will even try to set the Federal fortifications on fire, which fails miserably. To kind of give you an idea of the attack around, mentioning a little bit of the 7th Kentucky. So the 7th Kentucky, again, is on the right. They're having to deal with the bluff. And it's very tough trying to get around it because you legitimately have a river down there. And so elements of Company A of the 10th Kentucky, Bennett's company, that is the Partisan Rangers that are with Adam R. Johnson, have made their way around the Federal left flank at that point in time and temporarily push back Company K. And so this is an account from Emmett Totten of Company K. I was on the left with Lieutenant Tennant, that's how it's known, where the rebels made the heaviest charges and lost the most men. Lieutenant Tennant distinguished himself while other officers would order retreats. He would order forward and always go ahead of himself, swinging his sword and cheering the boys on. If it had not been for him, we should have been whipped certainly. And at one point, again, those Federals will fall back. They will fix bayonets and push those elements of the 7th Kentucky and 10th Kentucky off. And some of those men will legitimately fall off the cliff and into the river. And there are accounts of their bodies just floating down the Green River, and their blood just staining everywhere. By this point, the Confederates are starting to realize, wait, we can't really crack the front of the Federal line and also the right flank of their line, the Confederates' right flank. And so General Morgan, by this point, is going to look at one of his best officers, David W. Chenault, the man that can get the job done. He's one of the best officers in Morgan's command, that can, he trusts him a whole lot. I think, Betty Jane, you had mentioned how Morgan had said that Chenault, whenever Chenault was towards his rear, he felt a lot safer because Chenault could just get the job done. If you told him to do something, he was going to get it done for you. So Chenault's men at around, give or take, about 9 o'clock during this point in attack are going to be ordered to go down this ravine, down over here, if you all want to start just looking down over here. Their orders are basically very simple. Get around the Federal right flank, Confederate's left flank, and just push them off. This is the final stroke for the Confederates because they are so desperate for trying to break the Federal lines over here. So Chenault's men are way down into this ravine. They're slowly but surely marching around. And they finally get to there. Lieutenant Travis said that whenever they charged up, they looked like locusts just coming up. You got to imagine, there's about 500 men charging up this ravine. How many Federals do we have over in here? 170. 170. There's only 170 of them. So they're outnumbered by a whole lot. And so these Confederates are going to start moving up. But you got to imagine by this point, it's about 9 o'clock. This battle has really started kicking up at around 7 o'clock, give or take. And so the majority of the Confederate ammunition is starting to be spent. They don't have a whole lot more left. And so they don't have enough ammunition to, if they break the Federal lines, they don't have enough to just finally finish them off. All they have is just sheer muscle and steel. That's all they've got. They don't have any bullets left. Very few of them have any, if they have any at all. And so they start moving up. Orlando H. Moore, which is in the main Federal line, is starting to see this. He also has a close encounter of almost being killed. He saw a Confederate out into this field, getting behind a stump and almost about to shoot him. And he looks at a man from Company D and tells him, "Hey, I'm going to shoot him real quick." And he shoots him, kills him like that. Colonel Moore sees this happening when the 11th Kentucky's down at the ravine. And he's going to look at his last reserve. Not really last reserve. We'll figure out the last reserve, who they are. But nevertheless, Company I is the only reserve that he has right there. He looks at Martin DeBow, who is a Mexican War veteran, and tells him, "Look, I need you to protect my right flank." He's going to order his men right off of that knoll over into here. They are going to spread out as skirmishers. That's not good for a Federal line if you were spreading out as skirmishers and this is your right flank. Because if this goes, you're done. The Federals can't go anywhere because the river is right there. So Martin DeBow's men will spread out and skirmishers along right over in here. And they're going to wait until the Confederates get into within pistol shot range. And that's very close with an infield rifle. That's what the Federals have over here. That's their armament. So the Confederates are starting to move up. They're getting ever closer because they know that if this attack succeeds, they've won the battle. So the Confederates are moving up. DeBow's men eventually at pistol shot range will tell his men to open up fire. And here's an account for Private John Wilterding.
Wilterding.
Wilterding. Thereupon they started heavy firing, and the enemy thought they could encircle us. Some of our men had to retreat from the stronghold into the woods. When the rebels were within reach of pistol shot of us, we began to shoot, and every shot of our men was deadly for the enemy. We lost very few. And so his men are starting to fire. Chenault, kind of describe Chenault for you all. How to give this gravity of the situation. Chenault is from a very prominent family in Madison County, Kentucky. He is well respected within his regiment, very well loved by his men. He is at the head of his regiment on his horse, urging his men to keep on pushing on because he knows that if he can keep his men going, this attack is going to win. They're going to win the entire battle. This attack is going to succeed. Right over into this area, David W. Chenault is trying to lead his men on, and all of a sudden, whack, he's going to be shot in the head. He's going to die instantly. He's going to fall off of his horse. How many of you all have ever seen the movie Glory? All right, you know, during the last attack, whenever Colonel Robert U. Shaw is going up the fort and he's going to get shot, and for a moment there, his men are just awed at what has just happened, and they don't have anybody to keep urging them forward until everybody just starts going. That's that point. That's what happens right over here. Those men are so shocked at seeing Chenault fall dead right over here. His lifeless body right over there. One of the privates will pick him up and take him off the ravine. Major McQuarrie of the 11th Kentucky is going to try to get hold of the regiment and try to keep them pushing. But most of his men are tired by this point. They have attacked again almost about 8 times. They're almost worn out. You got to, again, the 11th Kentucky have been up since they've been moving well over 24 hours, 48 hours, if you want to give or take. They are tired. Major McQuarrie will look at one of the captain's treble and tell him that he has second command of the regiment. Go ahead, get your men, keep moving them forward. Treble's going to try to get up to the Federal breastworks. He's immediately going to be shot, killed. So what's happening now? The guys that know what are supposed to be happening, the guys that can lead men to keep on, continue on to this attack, are starting to drop like flies, like that. So the 5th Kentucky, they realize, wait a second, something's going on. 11th Kentucky isn't pushing this attack forward. Major Brent of the 5th Kentucky sees this and starts riding towards over here. He's going to get shot in the heart, falls dead like that. So by this point, Morgan knows that this attack isn't really going to be going on any much further. And he also hears reinforcements are coming. And we're going to discuss about that in just a little bit, but he's going to capture a sergeant within the 25th Michigan, Sergeant Merle. Merle's going to tell him that, hey, we're going to have reinforcements coming. 2 regiments of infantry, 1 regiment of the 2nd Michigan Cavalry, and a battery of artillery. This does not happen. The closest federal regiments are about 30 miles away, and that is a 30-mile radius. There are no federal regiments that close. And so Moore will immediately start trumpeting, reinforcements are coming. Men along the line will scream out, reinforcements are coming. And what the reinforcements actually are is a 20-man company. We're actually down at the bridge. We're going to discuss that once we get over towards the stockade and about that whole little story. And so Howard D. Smith, who takes control of the entire situation, tells Morgan, look, we can't do it. We cannot destroy the Federals over here. They are just too strong. We have got to fall back. Send over a flag of truce, collect our dead. We can't do this anymore. We have got to retreat back. And that's what the Confederates do. They fall back, send a flag of truce over. In around 10 o'clock in the morning, the last shots are fired over and throughout here. Any comments from you?
Well, okay, the couple things that in the mix. Moore is a bugler, so he can bugle commands, and the reason he must do this is because Company I came from the Netherlands, and some of them don't speak English, so they listen to his commands through the bugle. But see, every time the bugle goes off, it makes the Confederates think that there are more and more reinforcements coming. So it's that's the reason on our little crest we have a bugle and we have the Confederate monument, but the bugle is for Colonel Moore. And so anyway, that plays a key part with these men that don't speak English. Okay.
Any comments, questions, or concerns while we're over here?
Company I are true Dutchmen.
Yes.
They're
Typically, you hear Dutch, and it's a derogatory for German, but they're
When
true
I
Dutchmen.
when I went to let's see, was it Grand Rapids? In the library, there's a Dutch college up there, and some of the letters are still in Dutch, and so somebody had typed them up, though had translated them, and so that was very interesting for me to see.
We don't hear much about the actual Dutch involvement.
Yeah.
They're legitimate Flying Dutchmen. All right. Well,
And I want to say the Dutchmen were more religious than any of the other
Yes.
groups, because over at Munfordville they'd had a slight contact with Morgan's men, and they had captured some of them. 17 of them were in prison, and one of the men wrote, "The devil seems to shine in their eyes." So that they prayed that God would be on their side. And so their minister, Von Raalte, had given them, said, what we want you to do not come back as a coward. Come back that you have given, you've been a good American. So anyway, they did their best. And we have more letters from the Dutchmen than just about any other regiment.
I think we're going to head on to the stockade area now. So we're going to mount up and head on
Mount
over.
up. Move out.
intelligence have necessary.
I mean, they were literally having to scale rock like this. That's what the 10th Kentucky did, the Company A Bennett. Oh yeah, these were old logging roads. I think that's what the locals say that they're logging roads. The stockade originally was right over here, and they had little paths that would lead down to the river.
Well, if I gotta get water, it's easier to go this way and walk all the way back
Yeah.
to the bridge. And
And the river's navigable, right? You could bring supplies on the river, right? If you could get down to it.
If it's up like this,
Like
right
this.
here, right now. But if it's at the time of the battle, it's not really that tall.
yeah, the summer of '63, like the summer of '62, there's still major drought
Yeah.
going on too.
Now,
It's
it
got to
didn't-
be pretty low,
The
right?
previous days, it had rained a lot. And we're about to discuss that. A
Okay.
lot. I don't want to.
Let's jump the gun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of steamboat traffic on the Green River. How far navigable was it under normal?
You could
Gordon
start
said that they
from-
would take
Yeah.
tobacco from here. Now, I don't know if that was on flats or skiffs.
Yeah,
or
it was on
whatnot.
flats.
Okay.
It was on flats.
But you know, there were steamboats downstream from. Well, I want to say Boynton on the Barren River. But you know, I read in the accounts of Morgan and others. There's
Steamboats.
steamboat activity on Green.
Probably not up in here.
That's what I'm
It's
thinking.
not as deep up in
Yeah.
here. Probably more towards getting close to the Ohio
Yeah.
than anything.
And I canoed.
Yeah.
Voice that canoe trip went past Muffordville, and there's lots of shallows there. So I
Yeah.
kinda-
Oh,
kinda
yeah.
check that out.
Oh yeah. It's just
Yeah. Yeah. Calhoun. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that is staying put.
So this is the area of the 9th Corps. This is where we're going to get into a little bit of the Eastern Theater, if you will. So we're going to stay close to the Western Theater.
We're still in the West. I guess we're okay.
So again, if you kind of maybe forgot about the 8th Michigan, 79th New York will get into Tebbs Bend, the Tebbs Bend area in April, March-ish, kind of even around that time frame of 1863 when the 9th Corps started to move into Kentucky. Now, if you had mentioned Vicksburg a little bit earlier, the majority of the regiment is going to leave Tebbs Bend in and around May, give or take early-ish May or April, somewhere around there. Going towards Vicksburg, and they were left with the task of rebuilding this bridge. They had some very experienced engineers within the regiment, and so they're going to leave a 40-man detachment of those two regiments. It's not 80 men total, it's just 40 men of the two regiment, under the command of Michael A. Hogan. Now, he's a first lieutenant at this point in time, and Hogan is... He is not going to cuss, but an SOB. That is what he is. He is.
He's not a Hogan's hero.
No, he's not a Hogan's hero. Yes, I think that's good. That's really good.
Use that. You can use that.
That's really good. Yeah. These are Hogan's heroes. So his 40-man detachment will be here rebuilding this bridge. Now, during the latter part of June of 1863, there's going to be several days, about 7 days worth of rain that is just going to be continuous over and over and over again. So the Green River is going to rise. And for the past several months, they have been working on this bridge. Will immediately just be lifted up by the river and thrown down and just destroyed like this. One of the privates in the 12th Rhode Island, that's a whole other story, said that they were just sitting on the bank of the Green River on the opposite side, watching the river slowly but surely rise. They saw the bridge just suddenly snap. Literally, it was still intact, but slowly but surely just fell away. I could not imagine the pain and the anger that those guys had probably felt, just seeing their entire month's worth of projects just go away. And so then, for the past several days, they have been rebuilding the bridge. On the night of July the 3rd through the 4th, Hogan's men will start preparations for this upcoming battle. And they're mainly going to be they're not going to be along these bluffs. When we're driving down, I'll be sure to try to stop us somewhere where we can kind of tell you where they were possibly at. We're not 100% sure because Hogan does not survive the Civil War. He will actually be killed in the latter part of 1863. He slept with another man's wife, and the man found out. He was an officer in the Kentucky regiment and shot him.
There you go.
And got away with it. So A little Dan Sickles history.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot written about just this little area, but from what we can tell, Hogan's men were along the ridge line, as we'll figure out where they're at driving down. So during the night, Moore will move his entire camp across the river, down the ford below the bridge, and I'll show you where that ford is. We can't go to it today and you can't see it today, because the river's up. But it's just below the bridge. He's going to start moving his men across. Now, during that nighttime maneuver, Betty Jane had actually mentioned him moving across the bridge over and over and over again. Now, that's because they know that there's a flanking column. Remember, Roy S. Cluke, about 300, low 300s, high 200s numbers of men that are flanking around. They've made their way to the bottomlands off in this direction. Once we get across the bridge, I'll show you where their positions were. They're going to set out pickets, and they'll actually capture Sergeant Merle, who told Morgan that, hey, we're getting reinforcements, when it was just a 20-man company. Now, Moore during that night again will be moving men across the bridge to make it sound as if they have a lot larger men than they do. And then once Moore's across the bridge and up and over in here, he's going to detach about 20 men from Company E, that's under the command of Lieutenant Travis, to hold the area around the ford. They're going to be basically stationed in and around the trees that guard the ford. They're basically told, just wait, see if any Confederates attack, because they know there is a flanking column that's around there. He wants to make sure that his back is secure, because this is Moore, his only line of escape out of here. And if that goes, he's gone. This is basically he might as well just give up. Now, throughout the entire day, you're going to have the main battle going over here. For the majority of the day, for these guys over here, it's just very quiet. Now, Lieutenant Hogan's men, to kind of start talking about them and their positions. Lieutenant Hogan's men were veterans of many Eastern Theater battles. You have the Battle of Secessionville in South Carolina. You have the Battle of Bull Run for the 79th New York. And more importantly, the Battle of Antietam, Burnside's Bridge. And I mention this because the 79th New York and 8th Michigan did not fight for Burnside's Bridge. They crossed Burnside's Bridge, but they certainly looked at the Confederate positions going across Burnside's Bridge. And how many of y'all have ever been to Antietam, especially onto that portion of the battlefield?
Yep.
Okay, it's somewhat of the same circumstances for these men. Okay, you have a bridge, you have high bluffs on the other side, you have great rock areas. There's basically a quarry just right over in here where Federal soldiers actually took rocks out, and they will just use that to their advantage. And they also have open fields of fire. If you were a Federal soldier over here, look how far you can see. Okay? They also took tons of the trees down on the opposite side of the river, so their field of fire is perfect. Now, it isn't known whether or not Hogan's men built some kind of breastworks, but I'm going to give you some kind of example. Remember, they're veterans of Burnside's Bridge, so they know what defenses can do against larger numbers of the enemy. Hogan is also an engineer, so he knows that he can easily build something very quickly, and it's going to be a substantial amount of being able to push back the enemy, hold them back. You gotta remember, he's about 40 men. There's about 20 men down at the ford. He doesn't know how many men are across the way. Now, they're basically going to be staying in and around that area. That's kind of the whole story of the 8th Michigan. Once we get down there, I'm going to show you where their positions were and some other places where they put men. Just one other quote. I know you can't see the bridge from here, but during the night of the 3rd into the morning of the 4th, the 8th Michigan, 79th New York will build a stone wall across the bridge that they had. It's not really a bridge, it's just a really wobbly structure that they built after their bridge literally lifted up and drifted down to the river. There's going to be 10 men behind that stone wall, and the rest of them are going to be up in the bluffs, and we're going to show you where those are at. So any questions or comments or concerns while we're over here?
So those men are basically on the bridge?
They are across the bridge. They're on the other side. I'll show you where they're at. It's very easy. Once you can actually see where they're at, that'll make a whole lot more sense. We ready to head down? Okay.
Thank you.
Corn and their sublet bottom. They burn 3 things.
Yeah.
But see, we followed the footprint of that road.
New York Highlanders are somewhere along these bluffs over and up in here. And just take a gander and look and see how steep this is. If you've ever been to Burnside's Bridge, it's almost the exact same terrain as it was at Burnside's Bridge over at here. So, Roy S. Cluke and Lieutenant Oshawa Owen, the 10th Kentucky, are off in this direction, down into the bottomlands of Tebbs Bend. They've been waiting there for several hours. His men are tired, so he's going to let his men rest. He's going to push out pickets, and they're basically going to be sitting there until about 10 o'clock, when they no longer hear the battle over here at the main site. Roy S. Cluke has not received any word from John Hunt Morgan at what is happening at the main battle site. He believes now that they have won the battle. And so he will immediately order his men to start moving towards this area. Now he's going to start going towards the direction of the ford. What he's wanting to do, he perceives that the enemy is starting to run in this direction, trying to get across this ford and start making their way out of Tebbs Bend. What he's wanting to do is meet them before they do that and gobble up as many of them as they possibly can. His men will start heading into this direction. Remember, this would have been an open field right in front of you all to a certain extent. These guys up in here, they have perfect fields of fire to pick off tons of them like that. So Roy S. Cluke's men are going to start moving forward. They're going to start making their way towards the ford, which is off in this direction. Now, kind of talk about what the situation is. Those 20 men from the 25th Michigan, Company E, Lieutenant Travis's guys, are going to be called up to the main battle at around 7:30, give or take. They are those reinforcements that Moore has said that is coming. Whenever he starts bugling his men forward, like, hey, there's reinforcements coming, then his men start screaming, reinforcements are coming. It is just one little 20-man company, that's all. Now, that happens at 7:30. Now Lieutenant Hogan is left with just about only 40 men. Okay, and then again, Roy S. Cluke is starting to move forward towards the ford. Hogan's men, about 10 of them, have erected a stone wall where the bridge is. They're hiding behind there. At some point they start falling back up to here, up along these bluffs over here. Now again, we don't know if they built up breastworks or if they're behind the trees, but nevertheless, they have perfect fields of fire against their enemy. Roy S. Cluke's men get to the ford, and out of nowhere, pop shots start hitting his men. About 3 or 4 of them, give or take, fall off their saddles dead. By that point, word has finally reached Cluke that Morgan is finally starting to retreat, just as this attack is starting to open up. And so, if Betty Jane and we could possibly discuss this, but I think out of anywhere in the entire Battle of Tebbs Bend, if the Confederates were going to succeed overwhelmingly, it would have probably been here. Would you agree, possibly? Or, I mean, it would have possibly had to have been here because there's only 40 men here versus about 200 to 300 men.
If Cluke can hold the position.
Yeah.
But you see, what they'd done, the Federals had cleared the fields of fire. They had cut those trees over on the other side of the river. Mm-hmm. So the Confederates were really startled when they didn't understand. They thought they would gobble up the Yankees that were running off from this position. And then it didn't turn out that way. So they could have taken them from this direction, but they didn't pursue. They didn't come across.
By the time the attack is starting to open up, that's when Cluke receives word, hey, guess what? We're heading out. We can't do this anymore. We got to go. And so then, just to give you a little bit of quote of why I gave the label to Lieutenant Hogan, here's an account from Travis. Hogan was a brag of great self-importance, boasting soon afterwards that the colonel was indebted to him for the victory in terms so abusive and insulting that the colonel was forced to express himself against this worrisome lieutenant. Basically what he was saying is that Lieutenant Hogan said that he had won the entire battle of Tebbs Bend because he held off with just his 40 men. And that kind of tells you what Hogan is.
And isn't there also another incident prior to here where he takes credit for something else?
Yes, in Columbia.
Okay,
Yeah.
and he wasn't, he lied about that too?
Did you tell the whole Hogan story?
Just only little snippets of the whole Hogan story.
Well, my book has sex and violence in it.
Oh yeah. We had talked about him.
There are copies for sale. Right there at Toll House.
No, Hogan turns out to be, well, he's a very good bridge builder. That's the positive about Hogan. He has a wife and little children back in the north, in Michigan. However, Miss Amanda Crandall is in Lebanon, and she misses the stagecoach out here to see her husband. And so he volunteers. He's in Lebanon, and he says, if I'll treat you like my sister. And so she believes him, and she gets in his buggy, and he proceeds to rape her between here and Lebanon. And so they have to spend the night somewhere. And so she lets him go to sleep, and she gets up and tells the homeowner what has happened. And so she escapes from Hogan, but she tells her husband when she meets him about what had happened. And so by this time, Hogan is now stationed in Camp Nelson. So her husband goes to Camp Nelson and said, did you treat my wife like a dog? And he smiles, and so he is shot and killed by Crandall. And so the record said he was assassinated. Well, that tweaked my interest, so I had to go see why he was assassinated, and I learned that story. So anyway, that's what happened to him.
Do you know if Crandall was prosecuted for?
Oh, yes. Oh, but they said that he in his court-martial, because of killing another officer, they said he got off because of his honor, that he fulfilled his family's honor, therefore he was not be prosecuted. That was the end of that. But Mrs. Hogan has to go before the court up in Michigan and ask for aid for herself and her children. So, anyway, that's the story.
Hogan's not a
But
hero.
I was as surprised as you are when I found all that. It's we know it happens, but it's seldom ever recorded.
I wonder how he treated his sister.
Well, that's
What's going on there?
That's not good.
that's right.
So,
He was
Taylor,
a
you've got an
non-customer.
island here, and then you've got the other side of the river over there.
Yeah.
So where were they when they started the attack? On the other side?
So, Cluke's men, is that what you're meaning? Yeah, Cluke's men, they're going to be on the other side of the river.
Okay.
Once we get across over the bridge, I'll be able to directly show you where their positions are going to be at.
And does it always flow on both sides, or just when the river's up?
They let water out.
Right.
Yeah, you look at the trees down there. There might be a little channel there, but
Yeah.
The trees give a line. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Good call.
And if you're trying to get a sense of where Lieutenant Travis's men work, they're going to be down in where the fort is. And you can probably tell if an attack had actually really happened out here that they would have been in a very bad situation. But luckily they got out at like 7:30.
Okay.
We picked up a Confederate pistol bullet in that bottom. It was about 10 inches down.
Wow.
That's Gary Osborne did that. And I'll show you sort of where it was picked up when we get down there.
And if you're wondering about casualties as far as Lieutenant Hogan's men, they suffer one casualty, but it's very interesting how it happens. Lieutenant Thomas Campbell, that was with the 8th Michigan, was actually in Campbellsville, I believe? I think he was in Campbellsville at the time of the battle, and he heard the rifle shots and started running this direction. And then elements of the 2nd Kentucky, I believe, found him. He tried to get away. They shot him, and they took him as prisoner, and eventually he escaped. He would actually be wounded in Spotsylvania the next year in the summer. So that's the only casualty for these guys over in here. So.
written my casualties. In the taped version, when he asked me the casualties, I said that I didn't give the correct number of wounded or something. Anyway, I messed it up somewhere or other. So I wrote them down. Okay, the Confederate casualties had 36 killed and 45 wounded. That said Duke, although Colonel Moore says 50 were killed and 200 wounded. And that's probably, because that's a big exaggeration. So somewhere between 81 and 100, you have the correct answer. Anyway, 1 colonel killed, 1 major killed, 2 captains killed and 2 wounded, 9 lieutenants killed, wounded, or captured, 4 sergeants wounded or captured, 5 corporals wounded or captured, 3 surgeons captured. And you have, of the privates captured, 3 die in prison. And there are 30 Confederates captured in all. In Union, have 6 killed, 24 wounded, and 2 died later. They had 1 lieutenant wounded, 1 sergeant killed, and 4 wounded, 3 corporals killed, and 4 wounded. So Moore lost 13 officers as opposed to Morgan's 20-some officers. So that's the story.
And that's not really good for opening up in a raid whenever you lose those experienced NCOs and officers just like that. It's one of the first big battles. And especially,
he's going to lose Tom.
Oh yeah, he's going to lose Tom tomorrow. The Battle of Lebanon.
Tom Morgan, to people that don't know who it is.
Alright, with that, head on down.
His brother Tom, who sang in the choir.
The day. And you can quickly see, if you look up into the bluffs right over in there, how great of an advantage Hogan's men are going to have. Just those 40 men alone are going to have over in here. And especially, imagine all these trees are gone all throughout here. This field of fire is just perfect. This is a kill zone for them. Cluke's men are going to move basically at a right wheel, if you will, depending upon where the direction are at the time. They're going to start heading that way. They get the report, guess what, we got to leave. They pull back in this direction. Again, the Federals said that they unseated about 2 or 3 of them, possibly 4. They're only going to capture maybe a few of them as well. And other than that, that's just the skirmish here at the bridge. So.
The temporary bridge was
yes,
same
the
place?
temporary bridge that we have here.
Where was the stone wall?
The stone wall would have been across the bridge on the opposite now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just right across from over there.
I'm saying the temporary bridge during the battle
Yeah.
was the same place?
Yes.
More or less?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they had erected that either through the night of the 3rd through the 4th, somewhere around that time frame.
Okay.
And there would have been 10 men stationed there at that time until they were recalled back up to the bluffs.
And where was the stone wall then?
Just right across the bridge on the opposite side.
Okay, got it.
So imagine your Confederate going in this direction. They're just right across the river, basically, behind a stone wall on the opposite side of the opening. Okay.
I think they just took some of the stones that they had used
yeah.
to build,
Well, the rock wall is just right there.
abutment, and just put them up there and made a little fort out of it.
All right. Well, if you're all ready.
And anyway, we're just a town of widows right now, but anyway, she had great handwork to do all that. Those tiny, tiny little stitches. She did all that. And he was an Air Force general, and so she did that for us. Okay, this is, we paid $1,000 to have this one made. My young historians at the high school paid the money to have this one made. And this is important because Tebbs Bend was there. They said they fought harder at Tebbs Bend than any other battle. And so this is a 25th Michigan flag, and we have a prominent spot on the flag. You look at all the other battles they were in. And so we're trying to figure out if we can't put it on that wall over there and hang it.
Is the
over
red
there.
highlighting for the word Tebbs Bend, is that original?
Yes, I mean,
They really highlighted it.
This is, yes. They'll tell you that. Their monuments in Three Rivers has Tebbs Bend on it, along with Kennesaw Mountain or something. Yeah. And so it's the exact reproduction of the flag that's in the State House of the capital of Michigan. Yeah. All right, but we need to see it's deteriorating because we have it. It's not hung up properly. So anyway, I just wanted you all to see that.
Very cool.
All right. Yeah, on Amazon. It used to be $30.
Okay.
And and then I looked at them the other day, yesterday, and $160 they're asking for a new book. Don't pay that. I mean, nothing is worth $160. That's ridiculous. Anyway.
Also, too, you have an organization here, right? So how do people support your organization?
Just $10 will make you a member of Tebbs
Okay,
Bend.
there you go. And can you do that online, or do I need to send in a form? Or
The form is in your little white bag.
wonderful. So there you go.
How thoughtful.
What a coincidence.
It's almost like we talked about that.
But we need 15,000 right away to restore this, to take down the logs in the Union Hospital. And then we're gonna need thousands more to put the logs back up, because we have to take the logs apart to put down a floor and a foundation.
Yeah.
And so that's our main money raising goal right now.
So you'll take more than 10.
So I'll
Yeah.
try.
Yeah, we'll take more.
If you have some extra coins, if you have some extra coins, we'll appreciate that too. But anyway, we really appreciate your coming.
Oh, this was fantastic.
And-
Great having you all here.
Yeah, this is great.
And,
Couldn't have asked for a better guides today, right? This is
okay,
awesome.
and remember that we have the Atkinson Griffin House. We did say that. It's over in the Corps of Engineer property. And so had we had a little bit more time today, I had them let you go into it. But they close at 5 o'clock, so it's too late now. But anyway, you'll see a picture of it in your goodie bag and all the things. And that has the Confederate blood stains on the floor, and they really are blood stains, because I had it analyzed, and the hemoglobin is still, you can still see the hemoglobin on the microscope. And I thought maybe it's apples they were putting upstairs. I didn't know, because I wanted to be for sure. And so then we have several 25th Michigan images over there, and then we have the Morgan's Men images over there. And I know you don't like Morgan, but we got lots of tourists because
Oh, I'm sure.
we have more Morgan's images over there than any other place in the state of Kentucky. So anyway,
All of them have horns and stuff, right?
the devil shines in their eyes.
I love that. I'm going to use that in a future presentation.
Look, Wilterbank said that's in
Okay,
Wilterbank's letters.
okay.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, so
Listen, put down any emails or anything like that, contacts for you all, because, we might like to contact you for something, or something, you might like to contact us. But anyway, here's a register's book, so just write down something, telephone numbers or something, we would appreciate it.
in case y'all wanna know, this is the house I was raised in.
That's what she was saying. Yeah.
I lived here for 18 years of my life. Mom and Dad bought this from my great aunt and uncle lived next door here, and they had a store there. Well, my nephew lives there now, but yeah, they bought this house, and I remember Daddy saying that first night they lived here, Mama held a flashlight, he had a .22 rifle, and they killed the rats. It was in here. And y'all believe it or not, but in the wintertime, this old house was pretty bad, rough. But had a linoleum on this floor right here, and the cracks in the floor underneath this old sawmill lumber, cracks about 1 inch wide, and every time the wind blows, it raised linoleum up off the floor. We had a stove in here later on. We didn't at first. We had just a regular wood stove, but we had a coal or kerosene stove